Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell y'all something. Sometimes the most powerful move a woman can make is to stop giving a damn. Now, I know that sounds bold, but stay with me. It's something incredibly liberating that happens the moment you stop seeking validation from other people. I mean, really stop. Not pretend like you don't care while secretly hoping for a text back or telling yourself you're over it while checking your phone every 10 minutes. No, I'm talking about the deep kind of release. The kind where you let go of needing anyone to approve of who you are, how you look, how you speak, or how you choose to live your life. That's where the real power lives. See, a lot of people walk around like they own your self-esteem. You give them that access. You hand over your piece like it's a clearance item at a discount store, just hoping they'll tell you that you're enough. And the sad part is, sometimes you do everything right. You love hard, you give with both hands, you listen when they need to vent, and you pour all of your light into someone who has no idea how to hold it. And still, you're left questioning yourself. Why didn't he choose me? Why doesn't he show up like I show up for him? What else do I have to do? That mindset is a prison. Validation is a trap, especially when it comes from people who don't even value themselves. You are out here starving for crumbs of affection from someone who can't even give themselves a full meal of self-worth. And that's the cycle. You keep bending, twisting, shrinking, trying to fit into a mold of what you think will finally make you lovable in their eyes. But the truth is, the moment you stop begging for that recognition, that's when the shift begins. When you stop caring whether or not he replies, you start reclaiming your time. When you stop dressing for him and start dressing for how you feel, that's when your confidence starts to breathe. When you stop obsessing over what he thinks and start listening to what you think, really listening, that's when you begin to walk different, talk different, think clear. That's when you remember who you were before he had the power to confuse you. Validation is like a drug. The more you depend on it, the more control you give up. You stop being yourself and start performing. You turn into a version of yourself that exists only to please someone else. You laugh a little softer, you speak a little less, you dim your light just enough not to offend, hoping they'll stay. But here's the problem with that. People don't fall in love with who you really are. They fall in love with the mask. And eventually that mask gets heavy. But when you break free from that, when you get to a place where you no longer need to be seen to feel worthy, no longer need to be liked to feel beautiful, no longer need to be chosen to feel valuable, that's when you unlock something untouchable. That's when you become magnetic. Because nothing is more attractive than someone who validates themselves. Someone who knows what they bring to the table and is no longer afraid to eat alone. Power comes from knowing that your worth is not a group project. You don't need his applause to feel accomplished. You don't need his compliments to know you're stunning. You don't need his presence to feel whole. You were enough before he knew your name, and you'll still be enough long after he forgets it. That shift from do you see me to I see myself, that's the key. Because when you validate yourself, you stop chasing people who don't know how to handle you. You stop lowering your standards just to keep someone who was never supposed to stay. You stop over-explaining, over-giving, over-loving, and instead you start receiving. Your peace grows, your voice returns, your boundaries strengthen, your power expands. And here's the kicker. The moment you stop seeking their validation, they start seeking yours. Because people can feel when your energy shifts. When you walk into a room with self-respect, not desperation. When you speak with certainty, not neediness. When you choose yourself not once, but consistently, they notice. And they either rise to meet you or fall away. Either way, you win. That's power. That's what happens when you stop giving a damn about who claps for you and you start clapping for your own damn self. Let's get one thing straight. People don't just wake up one day and decide how to treat you. They learn how to treat you based on what you allow, what you accept, and what you make excuses for. Every time you let something slide, every time you swallow your voice, every time you say it's fine when it's clearly not, you're sending a message. And that message is, this is okay with me. Whether you realize it or not, you're teaching them. Now, you might not be doing it intentionally, but trust me, silence is a language. Indifference is permission. And when you don't set boundaries, people assume they don't exist. You may think you're keeping the peace by not speaking up, but what you're really doing is giving away pieces of yourself, one small piece at a time. You think you're being patient. You think you're being loyal. You think if I just hold on a little longer, they'll change. But change doesn't come from tolerating disrespect. It comes from refusing to accept it. How many times have you bit your tongue when you should have spoken up? How many times have you stayed quiet just to avoid an argument? How many times have you played it cool while your heart was breaking inside, just to prove you're not too emotional or too sensitive? Let me tell you something. The more you shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable, the more they forget your worth. And worse, the more you forget it too. People aren't stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. That slick comment he made, that time he canceled last minute without an apology, that time he ghosted for 3 days and came back like nothing happened, he was watching your reaction, watching how far he could push, watching how much you tolerate. And when you didn't check it, when you smiled through it, cried in silence, and let him back in without consequences, you didn't just forgive him, you trained him. You trained him to believe your feelings were negotiable. You trained him to think your love came with no conditions. You trained him to believe that he could show up halfway and you'd still open the door with a full heart. And every time you accepted less than you deserved, you told him that's all he had to give. But let me be clear. This ain't about blame. This is about awareness. Because the moment you realize you have the power to set the standard, everything shifts. You don't have to yell. You don't have to fight. You don't have to beg. All you have to do is raise your standard and stop settling for behavior that insults your soul. When you finally stop picking up the phone for disrespect, when you stop explaining your worth to someone who isn't listening, when you walk away the first time instead of the fifth, that's when people start paying attention. That's when they realize, oh, she's not playing anymore. Because see, the moment you enforce your boundaries, you start training people how to use you, and you start training them how to value you. Some people might call it attitude. Some might say, you're too much. Let them. Let them be uncomfortable with the version of you that finally puts herself first. That's not your problem. Your problem was trying to keep people around who only respected you when it was convenient for them. Not anymore. You want respect? Show people what it looks like. You want loyalty? Stop accepting inconsistency. You want love? Demand it in its pure, honest, present form. Not as a favor, not as a reward for putting up with pain. Love is not a negotiation. It's not something you earn by suffering. It's something that flows naturally when two people respect each other enough not to play games. So the next time someone crosses your line, don't just sigh and let it slide. Speak, act, leave if you must. Because the way you allow others to treat you is not a reflection of who they are. It's a reflection of what you've shown them you're willing to accept. And once you stop tolerating the bare minimum, you'll be amazed how quickly people learn to rise or disappear. Either way, you win. People have this twisted idea that walking away means you're giving up. That if you let go of someone, If you turn your back and choose peace over chaos, that somehow makes you weak. But let me tell you, walking away doesn't mean you're weak. It means you finally respect yourself enough to stop breaking your own heart. It takes strength to hold on, sure, but it takes real strength to look at something you once prayed for and say, this is no longer serving me. It takes courage to choose your own sanity over the comfort of familiarity. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is quietly pack up your soul and go. No explanation, no dramatic goodbye, no second guessing, just go. See, we live in a world that praises endurance. We're taught to stay, to fight, to keep trying even when we're bleeding inside. They say, stick it out, be patient, don't give up too soon. But nobody ever tells you that staying too long in the wrong situation can damage you in ways that take years to undo. Sometimes the fight isn't worth it. Sometimes the cost of staying is your peace, your joy, your identity. There's nothing noble about staying where you're disrespected. There's nothing honorable about constantly explaining your worth to someone who only listens when you're walking away. Some people will only value you when your absence shows them what your presence used to do, and by then it's too late, because when you really leave, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally, it's done. You're not walking away in weakness, you're walking away in power. You get tired of the same arguments, tired of the broken promises, tired of always being the one to initiate the healing. You get tired of waiting on someone to grow, to change, to rise when they've made it clear with their actions that they're perfectly fine as long as you keep doing all the work. So you stop. Not because you don't care anymore. And that realization, that's sacred. It's sacred to finally see your own value without needing someone else to confirm it. It's sacred to honor your boundaries, even when it hurts. Because let's be honest, walking away isn't always easy. Sometimes you still love the person. Sometimes you still believe in the good you once saw. But love without respect is a prison, and hope without evidence is just self-betrayal. You deserve more than recycled apologies. You deserve more than late-night texts that lead nowhere. You deserve more than emotional tug-of-wars with someone who only pulls you close when they feel you slipping away. And if that makes you too much in someone else's story, then so be it. You weren't made to be quiet in your pain just so someone else can be comfortable. Walking away is not a sign that you're cold. It's a sign that you've warmed up to yourself. It means you've finally chosen you. And the moment you choose you unapologetically without guilt, everything changes. You start attracting peace instead of drama. You start feeling light instead of heavy. You start breathing again, smiling again. The truth is, sometimes your silence says more than 1,000 arguments ever could. Your absence screams the boundaries your voice was too exhausted to explain. And if someone can only understand your value once you're gone, they were never truly ready to love you in the first place. So stop letting people tell you that walking away is weakness. It's not. Weakness is staying and calling it loyalty when it's really fear. Weakness is sacrificing your soul in hopes that someone else will finally see your worth. Strength is knowing when enough is enough. Strength is loving yourself enough to leave what is no longer love. And when you do, when you finally walk away, you don't lose, you rise. Every single time. There's something incredibly powerful that happens the moment you detach. I'm talking about real detachment. Not pretending you don't care, not putting on a fake smile while dying inside, but truly letting go of the need for someone's attention, affection, or approval. That's when the game changes. That's when the control shifts. Because when you no longer base your peace of mind on what someone else is doing or not doing, you take your power back. All of it. Most people don't realize how deeply they are being controlled by their emotions until they finally step back. You get caught in this loop, constantly thinking about what he said, what he didn't say, why he's distant, why he's pulling away, whether or not you're doing something wrong. You replay conversations in your head, reread messages, overanalyze silence like it's some kind of code you're supposed to crack. And while you're busy trying to figure him out, you forget yourself. You lose yourself in the process of trying to make someone stay who's not even sure if they want to. That's what attachment does. It puts you in a position of emotional dependence. It makes you think their actions are a reflection of your worth, that if they pull back, you must chase harder, that if they withdraw, you must prove yourself even more. But the truth is, when someone is unsure about you, the worst thing you can do is try harder. That's not love, that's fear. And fear keeps you stuck in a cycle where your happiness lives in their hands. But when you detach, really detach, everything starts to shift. You begin to realize that their moods are not your responsibility. Their silence is not a sign for you to panic. Their distance is not a cue for you to run after them. You stop personalizing their behavior and you start observing it for what it really is. That's when clarity sets in. That's when you stop asking, what did I do wrong? And start asking, why am I allowing this? Detachment is not coldness. It's not about being numb or unfeeling. It's about reclaiming your emotional independence. It's about knowing that no matter who walks in or out of your life, you're going to be okay. Not because you don't care, but because you care enough about yourself not to be destroyed by someone else's confusion. And here's what's wild. The moment you pull your energy back, the moment you stop trying to control the outcome, the moment you stop reacting, that's when they feel it. That's when the shift happens. Because people can sense when your energy changes. They can feel it when you're no longer emotionally available to be manipulated, tested, or taken for granted. And when they feel that emotional door closing, that's when panic sets in for them. Suddenly the texts come faster, the apologies show up, the interest returns. But by then, you're not the same. You're no longer the version of yourself that would have jumped at breadcrumbs. You've tasted peace now. You've felt the strength of your own space. And you've learned that peace isn't found in someone's validation. It's found in your decision to stop giving them that much power in the first place. That shift in control. It's not about revenge. It's not about making someone chase you. It's about balance. It's about no longer being the one who's always holding on tighter. When you detach, you stop being predictable. You stop being emotionally available at their convenience. You stop being a safe option they can return to whenever they feel like it. And suddenly, you're no longer the one wondering what went wrong. You're the one standing strong, knowing that you finally got it right, not by fixing them, but by freeing yourself. The control they thought they had, it disappears the second you realize you never needed it in the first place. Because true power doesn't come from holding on. It comes from knowing when to let go. You know what's crazy? You could cry your eyes out in front of some people, pour your heart out, tell them everything you're feeling, everything that's hurting you, and they still wouldn't change. Not because they don't hear you, not because they didn't understand, but because deep down, they don't take your pain seriously until you shift your energy. Until you stop showing up the way they've always expected you to. That's when they start paying attention. They don't notice your breaking point when it looks like begging. They notice it when it turns into silence. You could scream, you could explain, you could repeat yourself 1,000 times and still nothing. Because as long as you're available, as long as you're invested, As long as you're emotionally invested, they feel safe. Safe knowing that no matter how much they mess up, you'll still be there. But the minute that energy changes, the minute you stop replying right away, the minute your tone shifts, the minute you pull back your spirit, they feel it in their soul. Energy doesn't lie. People can ignore your words. They can even dismiss your tears. But your energy, that's different. That hits on a frequency they can't avoid. When your energy changes, you stop showing up with the same warmth. You stop chasing. You stop reaching out. You stop doing the emotional labor of holding the connection together all by yourself. And suddenly, they're left standing in the silence of everything they took for granted. They remember the way you laughed, the way you cared, the way you checked in first, the way you always made them feel like they mattered. But now you're distant, now you're unbothered, now you're calm, not because you've healed completely, but because you've stopped giving someone access to the parts of you they repeatedly mishandled. That shift doesn't scream, it whispers. And that whisper is louder than any tear you ever shed. You see, when you're in that desperate state, crying, begging, trying to explain your pain, they see it as weakness. They think you're always going to be there. They think they've got time. But when your energy shifts, when you emotionally detach, it disrupts everything they thought they had control over, because you're no longer fighting for the connection. You're no longer responding the way they expect. And that's unsettling for them. That's when the texts start coming in again. That's when the guilt shows up. That's when they start reminiscing, missing, regretting. But here's the thing. By the time they notice your energy has shifted, you're not waiting anymore. You're not holding on to the hope that they'll get it right this time. You're not playing that emotional game where they disappear and come back and you welcome them like nothing happened. You're done being predictable. And they can feel that. You didn't stop caring. You just stopped sacrificing your peace for someone who didn't value it. And that's the difference. When your energy shifts, it's not about revenge or manipulation. It's about preservation. You're preserving your heart, your time, your mind, because you finally realize that not everyone deserves your softness, your loyalty, your effort, especially not someone who only notices your presence when it becomes your absence. And it always plays out the same way. When you cared, they were careless. When you chased, they ran. When you cried, they shrugged. But when you finally got quiet, when you finally started pouring that love back into yourself, when you took a step back and let the silence do the talking, that's when they noticed. That's when they felt the loss. Because no one feels the weight of your worth more than the person who took it for granted. And no one feels the shift more deeply than the one who mistook your fire for a forever flame, not realizing you had the power to stop burning at any time. You spend so much time trying to prove your worth to someone who's barely meeting you halfway. You show up. You call first. You send a good morning text. You check in when they go quiet. You do all the things to keep the connection alive, even when it's clear you're the only one trying. And you think, maybe if I love them harder, if I'm patient enough, if I just give it more time, maybe they'll see. Maybe they'll change. Maybe they'll finally choose me the way I've been choosing them. But here's the truth. The more you chase, the more they run. The more available you make yourself, the less they value your presence. You become predictable, accessible, easy. And for some people, that's all it takes to take you for granted. They don't realize your worth while you're giving them everything. They don't notice your effort while they're standing in the light of your constant attention. But the moment you stop chasing, the moment you take a step back, everything shifts. Suddenly they're confused. They start wondering why you're not calling, why you're not checking in, why you're not chasing them like you used to. They start replaying old conversations, rereading messages, asking themselves, did something change? And yes, something did change. You changed. You stopped begging for crumbs from someone who always had a full plate and still let you starve emotionally. When you stop chasing, it forces them to sit with themselves, to sit with the silence, to sit with the version of you that no longer needs their validation to feel enough. And that silence, that distance, that's louder than any words you ever spoke. Because now you're not pleading, you're not proving, you're not chasing something that should have been given freely. You're just gone. And that absence hits different when someone was used to you always being there. They wonder if you've found someone else. They wonder if you've stopped caring. They wonder if you finally realized your worth. And you know what? You have. You finally understood that chasing love never got you anything but exhaustion. That when someone really wants to be with you, you won't have to keep convincing them. Love doesn't hide. It doesn't leave you questioning. It doesn't make you feel like you're hard to love. The energy you spent chasing someone else, you start pouring it back into yourself. You start showing up for you. You stop asking questions like, why don't they love me enough? And start asking, why did I let myself settle for less than I deserve? And when you stop chasing, you start attracting peace, clarity, strength, and sometimes, even better, people. People who don't need convincing. People who recognize your light without needing to lose it first. And here's the thing, when you chase, you're not just following someone else, you're running away from yourself. You're abandoning your own needs, your own peace, your own standards, all in the hope that someone else will validate you. But when you stop, when you pause long enough to reclaim your energy, you find yourself again. And that version of you, the one who no longer begs, no longer runs, no longer waits on someone else's pace, that version is unstoppable. So let them wonder. Let them sit with the silence they created. Let them feel the absence of your energy. And don't chase closure, don't chase explanations, don't chase people who were never meant to stay. Because the moment you stop chasing, you start choosing. You choose peace. You choose clarity. You choose yourself. And that choice, that's the beginning of everything changing, not because they came back, but because you finally stopped going after people who didn't know what to do with you in the first place.